Welcome to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM for Thursday, December 11th. I'm Andrew Walworth, and joining me are RCP President and co-founder Tom Bevan and Washington Bureau Chief Carl Cannon. Well, gentlemen, the situation in Venezuela keeps heating up. The U.S. Navy seized an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast yesterday. Tanker is called the Skipper. And was on its way to Cuba and then presumably on to Asia. And it's part of this sort of underground fleet of unregistered boats that move Iranian oil and other illicit stuff. So the boat itself is sanctioned and subject to seizure. Tom, the reporting is that this was all done by the book, but this is an escalation in the confrontation between Trump and Maduro, is it not?
It is. And we'll see, I think Maduro issued a strongly worded statement, which is about all he can do in this circumstance. Obviously, Venezuela is not happy about it, but we'll see what sort of an escalation this is. What's been interesting is, in this poll that we talked about, the Reagan Defense Forum survey, national survey, they graded the military approval or disapproval on 10 different subjects, and the subject that had the strongest approval, 62%, including 36% who strongly approved, was using the military to take down, narco terrorists and basically interdict these Venezuelan drug boats. So that being said, I'm interested to know what the public thinks of this and what public approval is going to be on this, whether the public does approve of it. And because, as you said, Andy, it looks like this is sort of the opposite of the drug boat strikes, which were kind of in a gray, illegal area. This seems to have been done by the book. This ship was subject to seizure, and so in that sense, the administration seems well within its rights to do this. But I am interested to see how the public responds.
Yeah, Carl. I mean, it's one thing to take down drug boats. It's another thing to sort of seize tankers. Maduro calls it piracy. I'm not sure he's entirely wrong. It was in international waters, but and Trump says we're going to keep the oil, which is another interesting thing about
By
it.
the way, can I just say that is, I told you, Trump likes oil and attractive women, and Venezuela has a lot of those, a lot of both, and so here we are.
So, Carl, how are you worried about the escalation here?
Well, it's piracy, but the piracy is what the Venezuelans are doing. This has opened a window, and people who, unless you cover this full time, I didn't know that it's called a dark fleet, and there's these boats all over the world, evading sanctions against Russia, Iran, Venezuela, and the piracy is these ships fought. This ship is got a flag that flies under Guyana. Guyana says that ship's not registered here. And so the pirates are the people taking, shuttling this oil where it's not supposed to be. I guess the best thing you could say about, the United States, maybe privateers is what Donald Trump is. Remember those? Remember Jean Lafitte from
right
high school
Letters
history?
of Mark.
Yeah. So, but the one thing that one has to worry about, the left screamed for years whenever the United States would do anything, it's blood for oil. And it's not a great look to say we'll keep the oil. I don't know who should get it, but I think the president should be much more careful there, because that plays into an ancient narrative, and I'm sure Maduro will be only too happy to exploit it. But
as will the Democrats, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know, Tom. This is, the rightful president of that country, who won the election, flew to Norway. She's won the Nobel Peace Prize, and this is a rogue regime here. And despite their opposition to Trump, their hatred of Trump, I don't think, if Democrats are smart, they won't be siding with Venezuela here. They'll, when you're killing drug smugglers, 87 of them at last count, that raises issues. Nobody was killed here. And maybe this captain should be arrested. They're violating all kinds of international laws. My guess is the American people are going to support this, Tom. But I of course, Trump could if Trump actually keeps the oil, he could probably ruin the narrative for himself.
Yeah. Well, Chris Coons, the senator, Democrat from Delaware, he's already jumped in. He said he's, quote, gravely concerned that Trump is sleepwalking us into a war with Venezuela.
Sleepwalking, there's nothing sleepy about it. It's very aggressive and in your face. It's if it was a dream, it's a night terror.
Well, I think this is part of the whole thing of trying to get under Trump's skin about him falling asleep, maybe in meetings and that sort of thing. But and the timing, as Carl points out, this seizure came, I guess, within hours of the Venezuelan opposition leader. Her name's Maria Corina Machado, who was in Norway, got out of the country. Apparently helped by the U.S. in some way to do that. I don't know how, but she's in Oslo now, and said the country would soon be, quote, democratic and free.
Which it used to be, by the way.
Yeah. So I mean, the timing of this, it doesn't seem entirely. Well, it could be a coincidence, but maybe not, Tom.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of coincidences in politics and geopolitics.
Tom's a conspiracy buff.
A little bit, a little bit. But look, Trump's made it pretty clear that Maduro. Do you remember? I think it was it Biden that said Maduro's got to go? Was that who? Well, I don't know. We've had these pronouncements. I think Obama said that Bashar al-Assad had to go in Syria, and then nothing happened. Mm-hmm. And
he's gone, Tom.
Yeah, he's gone now. But our presidents have often made these kind of announcements in the past, and then, nothing really happens. Trump has made it pretty clear that he thinks Maduro should go and will go. And it looks like the administration is pulling levers. I mean, God, he said, this is the funny thing about Trump is he says this stuff out loud. Like, yeah, the CIA is going to go down there and, we're going to operate.
We have covert operations going on, he says.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like, who says that? Well, Trump does. And he, there might be a method to his madness in the sense that he
has not yet used the phrase regime change, Tom. He hasn't gone that far.
No, but he said as much.
And Pete Hegseth will commit seppuku if he does.
Well, the point is, Trump seems pretty serious about forcing Maduro out, and he's using a bunch of different levers in the U.S. government to kind of make that happen, and supporting Machado is certainly one of those levers, and I'm sure we were involved in it and probably heavily involved.
It does seem, Carl, if you sort of follow the logic here, you cut off the drug income. Now you really. If you've got all these tankers now that can't leave Venezuela with oil, you're cutting off the oil income. They are boxing Maduro in pretty strongly, I guess.
Well, the president
has, I think, is the phrase. Bigly.
Actually,
Bigly.
I looked that up. And Trump never actually said bigly. He said big league.
Oh, Carl, you just ruined my line. I can't believe it.
You know how I am about quotes, Tom. I just can't help myself. But Andy, we were talking about this last week, and it wasn't clear to me what the plan is. And I think you guys are right about this. The plan now is to squeeze this guy so that he gets deposed. I mean, there's these 5, people who share power there. It's not. There's a first among equals. It's clearly Nicolas Maduro, but I think the idea is for the Venezuelan people and this cabal of leaders to say, wait a minute, if this guy's the problem, maybe he has to go. Mm-hmm. And then what? I don't know. Are these 5 oligarchs, or it'll be 4? Are they going to welcome Maria Machado back to run the country in a democratic way? Stranger things have happened. But it does seem that they're trying to put the pressure so the Venezuelans will say that Maduro's not worth the trouble.
They're not even going to have to do that, Carl. I think Maduro is going to. I mean, every day, the idea of spending the rest of his life with his, the $1 billion or whatever he's got smuggled away, embezzled away in some Swiss bank account, and living in exile in some. Yeah, exactly. On the beach in some, lovely place is looking better and better, and his options are looking worse and worse. And so I suspect he'll come to that decision pretty soon.
Spain
Will
would
that
be
be
nice.
the ninth war that Trump gets credit for stopping, the one he started?
No, no.
Okay.
This is not officially a war.
Okay. Okay.
He
Sorry.
will take credit though for getting Maduro out. There's no
Well,
question about that.
if he gets Maduro out and then not a shot has been fired, you'd have to say that that plan may have worked. Maybe that was the plan all along.
Maybe that's what'll get him the Peace Prize.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, that would be, small, scant consolation because he deserves 9 Pulitzer. I mean, Nobel Peace Prizes. But if he gets one, okay, I guess one's better than nothing. That FIFA prize he has already in the bag. So
That's right.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about the Senate. They're voting today on these 2 healthcare policy plans, one from the Democrats, one from the Republicans. Neither is expected to get the 60 votes needed to pass. We're about 3 weeks away from the end of the COVID-era subsidies for folks on Obamacare. So here's Senator Lindsey Graham and Representative Hakeem Jeffries on where they think things stand right now.
Right now in healthcare, are you concerned about Republicans and where you guys stand on this issue?
Well, I'm concerned about extending a program that's just never going to produce quality results. I'd like to make drugs more affordable. So how do you do that? You change the system that makes them too high.
Time has run out. Democrats have been pressing our Republican colleagues for months to deal with the healthcare crisis that they have created. And in a matter of just a few weeks, tens of millions of Americans who live in every single state across this country are about to experience dramatically increased healthcare costs. In some instances, premiums are going to increase by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. How is that acceptable in the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world?
Hakeem Jeffries is totally on the talking points there. I love the line about this is a crisis that the Republicans have created. But Carl, where does this thing stand and what happens next?
Let's just, you can't go fact checking these politicians. That's all we do. But just a reminder to our viewers and listeners, the Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act on a straight party line vote. And Republicans said, this will cause premiums to increase. This is not, this plan requires so much that it will hurt people. It won't help them because to cover all the stuff that's required by the legislation, you'll just have to pay too much. The Democrats didn't care about it. They said, no, you get to keep your plan, you keep your doctor. The Republicans just don't like you. So the thing passes and the premiums keep rising. And then during COVID, the Democrats passed this emergency legislation, what they called it, to give COVID relief to the people who take these plans and the insurance companies that underwrite them. And then they say this is temporary. Then when the Republicans want to let the legislation Democrats passed just lapse as called for in the legislation, then the Republicans are creating a crisis in healthcare. But what I just said doesn't fit on a bumper sticker. What Hakeem Jeffries says does. And so the Democrats keep benefiting politically from the problem that they created. Let's be fair.
Well, if you are one of those 22 million Americans who are on Obamacare, I think I do owe Tom an apology. I will apologize. I think I said it was 34 million, but I think he's got the right number, 22 million.
I think you were close, Andy, because we talked about this. There's 12 million fraudulent claims out there.
That's true. I should.
Yeah, I wouldn't give in just yet.
Okay, I'm going to recheck my numbers, but anyway, the estimate is that their average healthcare costs will go up 114%. That's a lot, Tom. And I'm just wondering, 22 million, that's a lot of Americans. That's a big change in their household budgets. I can't imagine this not having some political impact. And I can't imagine the Republicans not getting blamed for this.
Well, and as we've talked about, Democrats do have an advantage on the issue of health care. And I think this will help solidify that. I mean, Republicans have to be, they have to be, and they're trying to be, right, attentive to the fact that healthcare costs are increasing, while at the same time not just funding Obamacare because of number one, to Carl's point, it's the costs just have exploded and they continue to go up with no end in sight. This is like college tuition. I mean, it's just like at some point is the Democrats' position that we just need to keep handing out money, keep increasing the subsidies for as long as this goes, ad infinitum, and the Republicans are saying no. And the other part of this is what Carl just mentioned, which is the fraudulent part of it. And we still don't really have, I think, a good understanding. We've seen some reports about how fraudulent some of the Obamacare programs and subsidies have been. They've been taken advantage of in huge numbers, and that's something that works in the Republicans' advantage. So, but again, I think politically you're probably right, Andy. I think this is probably going to be put Republicans in a tough spot. But at the same time, passing Obamacare extensions, which has been what has been floated 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, that would hurt them pretty badly with their base. So they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. They're going to pay a political price for this probably one way or another. And the question is, can they get something that is acceptable to their base, but also doesn't allow Democrats to totally demagogue this issue into 2026? And I don't know that they're going to find that spot.
Andy,
the question,
one further comment.
Sure,
okay,
yeah.
Before this issue is potent. You guys are right about this. You want to know how potent this issue is? It turned Marjorie Taylor Greene from a right-wing flamethrower into a left-wing peacenik. This issue is what started it. So we shouldn't underestimate it.
Carl is referencing, for those of you, if you haven't seen this, go online. You can find it anywhere. Marjorie Taylor Greene took a picture with the leader of Code Pink the other day. Code Pink is a communist-backed outfit, anti-war group. And the woman is wearing, her shirt is obviously pink, and it says "I" and heart with like an Arabic symbol on it. Palestinian liberation, I think, is what it says on the shirt. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene she's completed the horseshoe, right?
Right.
It's happened. Right. The horseshoe's officially happened.
Yeah. The View was just sort of a momentary stop on her.
Radical transformation.
If Donald Trump called you a traitor, would your next move be to
become a traitor?
Yeah. Well said.
Well, Carl, so I just want to finish this up. We've got about 2 minutes left. We've got these two votes today. Okay, they don't pass. There's a little time between now and the end of the year where there's a possibility of a compromise, and there are these sorts of other plans that have been put forth. Some of them extend the subsidies by a year or 2 years, I guess, is sort of where people are sort of settling. Everyone has to pay something, so that's supposed to take care of the fraud. Is there room for a compromise here?
Well,
Carl, before you answer, put differently, I think Andy's question is, will you owe Tom Bevan a bottle of wine or not?
Right. Well, I'm not willing to
on this. Yes. Right.
Yeah. For those who don't know, I'm eternally optimistic and foolish. I mean, bet Tom on this show a bottle of wine that there'd be some accommodation reached. It's not going to be it's not be the Senate bill, but there's energy in the House on this subject. Hakeem Jeffries' demagoguery notwithstanding, he's willing to negotiate on it. With Josh Gertheimer, congressman from New Jersey, who we had on our show, is trying to put together, the last 16 centrists left in Washington in the House together to try and produce something. It's hard to envision exactly how the compromise works because, for the reasons we talked about, there are deep philosophical divisions here. Most Republicans would still like to repeal Obamacare altogether, let alone not subsidize it. So, and it's going to be hard to get those people. And Democrats, half the conference favors single payer. So you've got real divisions of people, and well-meaning people, but sort of on the extremes, who aren't fringes anymore. They kind of control the party. But this group in the center, what they want to do is, basically make the issue go away until after the midterms, if you're a Republican, so extended a year. But what the Democrats like Josh Gertheimer like to do is find a way to eliminate the fraud and the excess, and to squeeze and to try and figure out, is there a way that these premiums don't have to go up as high, so that the government could subsidize it, but they're not subsidizing waste. And that's a tough lift. There's this group problem solvers in the House. They're going to be the next country heard from after this thing fails today in the Senate.
All right. Well, guys, we're going to take a quick break, but stick around. When we come back, Jonathan Butcher is going to be joining us. He's an author, and he's going to tell us his theory of why maybe we aren't as divided as a country as lots of us
I can't wait
talking about.
to hear this.
This will be interesting. Anyway, you're listening to Real Clear Politics. We'll be back right after this. Joining us now is Jonathan Butcher. He is the author of a brand new book. Title is The Polarization Myth, Americans' Surprising Consensus on Race, School, and Sex. It says something about the times we live in that this is a provocative title. So, Jonathan, welcome to Real Clear Politics.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
So congrats on the new book. And let's start with its premise. You use the word consensus in the title. It would seem to me that the one consensus among Americans is that we are a very divided country. But you seem to say that on some key issues, we actually don't disagree. So what are those issues, and why do Americans tell pollsters they feel the country is divided?
Well, we keep hearing from so-called experts, right, in the mainstream media or from academia that America is irreparably polarized. I mean, if you look at the articles that were coming out around the election last year, or even before that, we keep being told that election results are so close that clearly America is just divided on everything, and people should be preparing for a civil war, right? Hence the Hollywood movie that came out last year with that title. So I wanted to ask the question to a representative sample of Americans and to parents, and I asked them what they thought about the issues. And it turns out on the topics that we talk about around our dinner table, or when it comes to education and our children, when it comes to these issues of, quote, gender, Americans actually agree on quite a bit. And I think that agreement on the issues is something that policymakers can use to help form a consensus and then build good public policy.
Well, go ahead.
No, Carl, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, Jonathan, Mo Fiorina, who I'm sure you know it, the Hoover Institution.
Mention Mo.
Yeah, Stanford, political scientist. And he's been writing this for, 25, 30 years now. Book pointing out that Americans, it's not what you see on cable TV. It's not even what you see on C-SPAN if you're watching the House of Representatives. That Americans are not, most Americans aren't overtly politically activists anyway. They're not ideologues. They're not extremists. And I wrote many stories, about interviews with Mo, quoted him in pieces for years in 3 different publications. But finally, last year, I kind of broached the subject and I said, Mo, I think the political parties have finally squeezed, finally beat you. I think they've made us so partisan. I kind of, you don't want to say to a guy, is your life work now been rendered irrelevant? It's kind of cruel, and he's a good guy and a friend. But I do wonder about this, Jonathan, because your book, you talk about this. You do. The surveys are clear. So should men be allowed in women's space in locker rooms like in Arlington, where there's little girls dressing on a man say, oh no, I identify as a woman, and just gets naked, and he's actually a sex criminal, a convicted sex offender. But most people say no. But the woman who won the governorship of Virginia and won easily, she wouldn't say no to that. She was asked that directly. So I wonder if the political parties aren't one step ahead of us on this in terms of what you're talking about.
Well, I think that the extremists, like you mentioned just there, they still exist, right? Perhaps even on both sides. I would just say that the families who do the working and the voting in the United States today do agree with what you just said, right? They don't want boys participating on girls' sports teams, but it's not just that.
Yeah,
right?
But they voted for Abigail Spanberger anyway.
In that state they did, but not in every state, right? I mean, I think there are, and I can't argue with you that there's not political, I think, polarization in some areas, but it's on these issues, though, that I think we find Americans do agree. And whether or not that drives how they vote might be a question for someone else. But I think what I found in my survey, and not just my survey, But in many others that I use to back up my research in this book, we found that we don't like the idea that our skin color is the most important thing about us. We don't like racial preferences being used in college admissions or frankly anywhere else. We don't like the idea that books with explicit sexual activity are on school bookshelves. We don't. We do want civics emphasized more in school, and so I think as we create a set of questions like this and a set of responses that allow Americans to show what they agree on, it does allow us to build a constituency around not just the polling answers, but around the research demonstrating that, yes, we should be teaching civics more in schools because right now students not only are not learning it, but they're becoming activists, right, instead of dealing with the issues.
Jonathan, is the problem, back to kind of what Carl was saying, so that we've talked about that there is sort of a sane center, right? And on abortion, for example, I mean, I think it's like, basically 80% of the country falls within, some limits. And then you've got your 10% on either side that are kind of the extremists, and you can go down the list of issues, but there has never been a successful candidate or party that has been able to harness that sane center, right? Ross Perot was probably the most successful, but even after him, there have been attempts to try and, there was this group called Americans Elect. Carl just mentioned in the previous segment, there's the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House. They've been trying to, elect somebody. No Labels has been trying to elect somebody. It hasn't happened. And so is it just that our system is set up to encourage the extremes and exclude people who are trying to capture that sane center?
Well, I think what we found is, especially on the left, they have pushed the bounds so far beyond what Americans are ready to accept that anyone who falls in the center, I think, feels isolated, and they're pitched as though they are isolated and that their ideas themselves are not even common sense. And I think that's the wedge that's being used, I think, especially coming from the left, that's creating this at least a mental divide, right? It's an appearance, right? It's a set of appearances that we're divided on these things. And I think what we need to remind Americans, and hence why I wrote this, is that we actually are not. And these issues are the kinds of things that should inform not just voting, but to the extent that they can be involved in their civic institutions, whether it's a school board or a community organization, to help to defend against the extremism on gender, on race, on any number of these questions. And I think that's what Americans need the encouragement for, right? I think we need to help to give people courage that they can be a part of, the school board that's going to resist these kind of policies that, either allow for the 1619 project to be taught as history, or for these gender
well, that
curricula.
Ship has sailed, I think, on the 1619 project. Yeah. Sorry to say.
Well, in some states, but in others it hasn't. I mean, I think we actually, at Heritage, we track the states that have adopted policies that reject the teaching of these kind of the word I'm looking
revisionist.
I'm looking for is, yeah, revisionist. But I was also thinking of identity politics. Thank you. That's okay. What I was looking for. I think there are states that have rejected that, and I think as we've seen states prohibit the use of taxpayer spending on DEI, that is actually applying to this same idea of teaching revisionist history or identity politics through 1619. So while they may have taken off like a shot, I actually think that the second thoughts now that many people are having shows that this center is actually quite strong. In my book, just quickly, I had the chance to interview the first Black president of Houghton College up in New York, a Christian school up in New York, and I asked him what he thought about DEI, and asked him what college presidents in the circles in which he runs are talking about. And he says, yes, he's having these conversations all the time where college presidents are struggling with how to lead their institutions through the storm of DEI. And earlier this year, right, University of Michigan voluntarily backed away from DEI. And this was right as the Trump administration was beginning to apply pressure to Columbia and Harvard for the same. So yeah. I think we are seeing now at the highest levels those who are actually showing this same sort of common sense policymaking that, as I've shown in my book, right, exists among everyday Americans.
Well, you're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. We've got Jonathan Butcher here with us. He's the author of this brand new book. It's called The Polarization Myth, Americans' Surprising Consensus on Race, School, and Sex. And, you know, Jonathan, in reading the book and talking to you, it sounds to me like what you're describing is sort of a center-right consensus. It seems to me that that's sort of, and people have said that about America generally, that America is basically a center-right country. But I'm wondering about the demographics of this. When you break it out a little bit further, are young people center-right as well when it comes to these issues? And what about women?
And that's a great question. And I'm happy to be honest that on not all of the questions did we get the responses that we wanted, right? I mean, I think that's the trick with polling is to be prepared to ask questions that you don't want to know the answer to. And so it's true that, yes, in the younger generation, there were some who were further to the left. And I had a subsample in my poll of school board members. And granted, that is not nationally representative. My parent and general population sample were, but again, the school board members, they also tended to be a little to the left on many of these issues and questions. And so I think that's why the research behind what makes good policy is so necessary. We cannot recommend, right, that policymakers design policies just based on polling, right? And to the extent that, for example, one of my questions asked whether or not teacher unions are part of the problem in K-12 education. And most people kind of rated them right around the middle, somewhere around the 5, 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. And that gave me the chance, right, to make the case that teachers unions favor extremist positions on everything from, nuclear defense to issues related to Middle East politics, things that have nothing to do with the working conditions of teachers. And so I think that's why, it's fair to say that not every American is going to be the expert on every issue. And hence the need for books like this one, I would hope, that can make the case that when we have Americans who show high levels of uncertainty, right, or neutrality on certain questions, that we can point out for them. No, the teachers unions really are a big part of the problem, right? They are driving this kind of radical instruction in K-12 schools, among other things.
Jonathan, let me ask you a question about that, because as long ago as 1996, Bob Dole, when he's the Republican nominee running against Bill Clinton, who's seeking a second term, and he attacked the teachers unions and tried very specifically to say, I'm not talking about most teachers, I'm talking about their unions. And the voting public just didn't make the distinction. Dole attacks teachers, and that's kind of what people heard, even though Dole is very careful not to say that. And as I'm listening to you, your book could be a primer for Republican candidates who would be able to say, go to the American people and make the case. But did you get any idea of what language they should use, or is there a different approach they should use? When you come up with this, what do you think Republican office holders ought to do with it, or candidates?
Well, I think circumstances have helped us a great deal on this particular question, because coming out of COVID, more Americans understand the difference between the unions and the teachers they say they represent. I think that there is widespread recognition that unions are, in fact, the ones who kept schools closed, right, during the pandemic. And I think that making the case today that unions are taking these radical positions, especially when it comes to why we have significant student losses. By the way, there's research from Stanford University and an academic that is respected in the field for many years that America is looking at shortfalls and downturns in GDP up to the tune of 90 trillion with a T, right, in the coming years. And that is because of the policies that unions had that kept schools closed. So I think that is the kind of data point that is very easy to take with you on any campaign trail or any discussion, right, with your school board, right, or with your local teacher, that this was caused, right, by unions that forced school doors to remain closed.
Jonathan, I think we got time for one more question. What role does social media play in all of this? I read a study not too long ago saying I think like 1 in 4 people now are getting their news and information from, it might even be higher than that. I think that was just, Facebook and now X and all of this. And obviously we are, therefore, when we're doing that, we're living in our own algorithms, right? And we're being siloed. And that seems to be one of the things that if you were going to take the opposite argument that society is getting more polarized, social media would be one of the things at the top of the list. But so how does that play into that's a challenge, I guess, to keep the center strong and wide, I guess.
I think you're exactly right. I agree. I think what social media has done, in the evenings before bed, as people, practice doom scrolling right before they fall asleep, these are the kinds of headlines, right, that we should be worried about. And so hence the reason for the poll. I mean, I think that's why I wanted to ask these questions and see what people really thought, because I think that when you really do try to get at what people want in their schools, what they want out of what's happening in society, it's different, I think, than some of this, more extreme stuff that they get from, whatever form of social media it is. I'll give you just a very quick, solutions to this, right? There are some very smart policies today in more than 24 states that are prohibiting the use of cell phones in schools. I think it's a big step to keep young people away from it at the right ages. And I think that as we now look down the path towards AI and what AI is bringing us, we have to recognize that the promise that AI may hold for businesses, and I think it does, is very different from the effect it may have on things like news media and the consumption of it, as well as young people and the use of AI. And I think we need to be very cautious about unleashing AI on the world, especially on young people, without more research about the effects that it's going to have.
All right. Well, Jonathan, thank you for being here. We're going to have to leave it there. We've been talking with Jonathan Butcher. He is the author of this brand new book, The Polarization Myth. You can check it out. It's a data-driven book, which always is fascinating to us here at Real Clear Politics. We're going to take a break, but before we do, I want you to hear this. True Trade if you're looking for a way to make more money, but let's be honest, the idea of learning something new or taking on more risk or working harder, nobody wants to do that these days. And that's where True Trade comes in. Their AI-driven technology enables you to generate income passively without risking your own capital, wasting your time, or needing years of experience. True Trade has created institutional-grade software that's the same type hedge funds and big banks use, and now it's available to everyday people like you and me. And here's the best part. They'll even guarantee your trading capital. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can trade with. And I don't know about you, but that kind of funding could be life-changing. So if you're looking for a smarter way to make money, download their mobile app on Android or iOS, or go to truetrade.io right now. That's TRUTRADE.io. Funding accounts are limited, so don't wait. Reserve your funding today and let technology earn for you. See terms to learn more. Just want to tell people, stick around after our program because we will be on with Megyn Kelly right afterwards. So if you're listening,
Megyn Kelly,
XM, we will be on with her. She's going to have us on, and we'll continue the conversation. But for now, we all know the president is very fond of gold, and now we have something called the Trump Gold Card. This is a new U.S. visa that you can buy. You can go to the Gold Card website to learn all about it. This is if you're a foreigner, I guess. It promises U.S. residency in record time, and all it requires is a $1 million fee paid by the applicant. There's some other requirements and bells and whistles, and there's a corporate plan as well with a different price tag. But basically, you can now buy U.S. citizenship. So, Tom, is this a good idea?
Is that a trick question? No, look, I don't have a problem with this. I mean, it is, we have spent decades throwing open our borders to accept, anyone and everyone from everywhere, oftentimes not knowing who they are and not knowing where they come from or what their background is or whether they want to do us harm or not. So, and this is what you would expect from Trump. He sees this as, I think rightly, he likened it to Willy Wonka, the golden ticket, right? It's a privilege to be here. It's something that people want. And so why not, if you're looking for ways to make money for the U.S. government and leverage our assets to get more income from people around the world, why not do this? I'm interested to see how many people take advantage of this and what the numbers are, but I suppose you could make the argument, well, it's only going to be for, the super wealthy, and are those the kind of people that we want? But if there is this corporate element and corporations are spending millions and millions of dollars to have their folks come here to work, that could be good as well. So I'm as I am with many things with Trump, I'm open-minded. I want to see the results. I want to see the unintended consequences, to the extent there are some, before I pass a total judgment that this is a great idea or a terrible idea. But I don't have a problem with it.
Carl, what do you think?
Well, I'm curious about one thing. So on Lady Liberty, that's in New York Harbor, Donald Trump's hometown.
We're going to change that too.
Millionaire huddled masses.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. So we'll still keep that statue. Trump may want to paint it because he likes to paint everything white. But should there be another statue? You know, maybe not on Ellis Island, maybe down on Wall Street. Where would you put it? With Trump holding a candle, and what would it say? You know, give me your rich, your spoiled, your shallow, your trust fund babies yearning to go to a Yankees game. I don't know what it would say exactly, but I've just been noodling with the language this morning. But it's not.
You don't like the idea.
Well, my point is, it's literally un-American, but countries evolve, they change. Is this now our ethos? It may well be. I'm curious about the cultural significance of it in terms of fundraising. A scheme. It's novel, but we took this country. I mentioned this the other day. We take between 1 million and 1.5 million immigrants every year, and have for like 40 years since Bill Clinton was in office. If we, are there enough millionaires in the world that you could actually defray, some cost to the government of absorbing people, and we're still running, $2 trillion deficits? Is it something that will benefit the Treasury? I guess you'd have to have an open mind about that.
Well, they say it'll generate between 80 and 160 $1 billion. So it's not chump change. Lutnick, Commerce Secretary, says it could be up to $1 trillion. And
half our annual deficit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess there are a lot of people out there with a lot.
Are there that many rich people in the world?
Yeah, there are a lot of rich people.
Where would they be? Where would these people be coming from, Andy? China, Arabia,
China, probably.
Yeah, China.
There's a platinum version, Tom. It's 5 million. Gosh knows, I don't know what you get with that, but you get some tax breaks with it.
It's like Tom on United Airlines
seats at the Yankee game.
Yeah, right. You certainly get a tour of the White House. But I think one of the arguments here, Tom, is this attracts not trust fund babies, as Carl likes to put it, but successful entrepreneurs would be coming here, and that they would start business and create jobs. And they're interesting statistic: 46% of the Fortune 500 companies in 2024 were founded by immigrants or the children of immigrants. And so these include just recent ones: DoorDash, EchoStar, Monster beverage drinks. And then, of course, if you go back a little further, you've got Tesla, Google, eBay, Yahoo. And
Google wasn't founded by immigrants. What? Google's founded by immigrants?
Yeah.
I'm going to have to fact check that.
It's immigrants or sons or children.
Okay.
If you go back in time, let me just finish. P&G, AT&T, Heinz. So immigrants have been good.
Bank of America.
Sure. So is that a reason to let people in? Or conversely, do you let in the hungry, the tired, and the poor because they're the people who scrap up and really do start businesses and don't just sort of put their money to work in the markets?
Look, in a perfect world, you do both. But our immigration system has been so hopelessly broken for so long that we've gotten basically all of the latter and not as much of the former, right? And we've just let in millions upon millions upon millions of people with really no regard for how that's affecting Americans, how it's, what it's doing on wages, what it's doing on housing, what it's doing on education, what it's doing on healthcare, all of these issues that we're now grappling with. And so we do have, we had this debate over the H-1B visas, and you do have folks that are out in Silicon Valley, they want educated people to come here and help code and run their companies and do some of this high level stuff. But Congress is so broken and the parties are so broken that we can't seem to have a rational immigration policy that can pass. I mean, it would be nice because immigration is a serious issue. We want legal immigration in this country. We need it for a variety of reasons, but we have to do it in a way that's smart and that takes into account all the things that I just talked about. And so we're not hurting ourselves in the process, that we're adding to America.
Okay. Well, talk about adding to America. Let's add to Chicago. President Obama, he's on social media talking about his new presidential library, which is scheduled to open in June of next year. It's been called the Obamalisk. It's kind of this brutalist tower. It does include a basketball court. It's controversial for any number of reasons. But Tom, this is your hometown. What do you think of the building?
So this is such classic Obama. He puts out this tweet saying, this is, from Michelle's hometown and where I became an organizer, and this is our gift back to Chicago. And I quipped on X earlier, something to the effect of, I mean, this is classic Obama. Like, here's your $1 billion East German style brutalist building that was basically, he expropriated public land. It was a public park to build this thing. It's 3 times overrun on cost. It's like 2 years late. It's been mired in all sorts of trouble and difficulties. And here's Obama presenting it to Chicago as his gift. You're welcome, Chicago. I mean, it sort of defies belief. I'm on record and have been on record on this program and other programs as wanting to do away with presidential libraries, even though we were just at the Reagan Library, and that is a fantastic library. But these billions of dollars that most of them are donated, and it's private, so it's not necessarily public, but to build these monuments to themselves, and Obama's doing this here in Chicago, it's absurd, and we don't need it. And I'd like to have one library where all the presidents are honored for their service to the country, but not these monstrosities that are popping up all over the country.
Carl, do you love the building?
I can't vouch for that architecture, but I can tell you that presidential libraries have 2 very valuable functions. The first, and if you doubt it, go to. I'll name 2, and there'll be people who aren't in contemporary life, so there's no partisan component, although they were one of them was very partisan at the time. But the Truman Library in Independence, Missouri, is a small replica of the Oval Office. And when Harry Truman retired from office, he would actually walk from his office in his home, walk the 2 blocks to the library and greet people. And they would say hello to them. And it reminded people, that library in particular, but others, Hyde Park and the Hoover Library, and reminds people that presidents come from humble beginnings. I mean, Roosevelt didn't, but he was, he had this, it was on a scale that people could accept. As recently as when Franklin Roosevelt was president, people would drive up to the White House.
All right, we got about a minute left here, Carl. So we got to end the history.
And the
lesson.
and Mount Vernon, which is privately owned, so it doesn't suck.
I think
on
the Kennedy Library is a nice piece of architecture.
But at Mount Vernon, they've turned this thing into scholars who can go and study and write books about the president. So I think we need presidential libraries. I think this one that Tom finds excessive may be a bad advertisement, but yeah, I think they're good.
All right. Well, good. We're going to have to leave it there. That's our program. You're listening on the podcast apps or watching on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, send us a comment. I do read them. It's great to hear from you guys. If you're listening on the Megyn Kelly channel, stick around. We're going to be continuing this conversation in just a moment. I'm Andrew Walworth. I want to thank you and thank our producers, Carrie, and Jake. On behalf of Carl, Tom, and everyone here at RCP, thanks for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow, or stick around. We'll see you just in a few minutes.